Abandoned dog can't stop crying. Days later, something amazing happens. This heartwarming story about humanity, care, and how love knows no bounds will change the way you see animals forever. What happened to be one of the saddest stories to spread across the internet became a symbol of hope for the community, showing the love, care, and strength that happens when people come together for a good cause. It also spreads a heartwarming message that things can get better if you open up your heart and don't give up. This story begins with two dogs, Max and Scooter. They were the most friendly and playful dogs in their entire neighborhood. When their owners would take them for walks, they would stop and say hello to every passerby, wagging their tails happily and smiling at the people who would stop to pat their heads. The two dogs loved their owners, and their owners loved them too. The two dogs were treated well. They were fed, they were taken for daily walks, and they were given many toys to play with. Their favorite activity to do with their owners was playing in the park. They would catch tennis balls and frisbees, running and wagging their tails happily. The dogs were truly, truly lucky. But on this one day that was particularly clear and sunny as any other day, something was different. Max and Scooter had no idea that the life they knew was about to change. The owners had a sad countenance on their faces, and they opened the door of the car and ushered the two dogs inside. Scooter and Max were oblivious to this, as they usually were. They were just excited to be in the car and to go on an adventure with their owners. The drive was in total silence, which was usual because there was normally music playing in the car, and the happy dogs thought nothing of it. The dogs thought nothing of it when the car pulled up into a shelter, as they had no idea what was about to happen. The owners walked into the building with sadness on their faces, looking very disappointed. They carried a few of the dogs' toys in their hands, as the oblivious pups followed them into the shelter. Inside the shelter, in the waiting area, the two dogs played happily with their toys in the corner, not realizing the situation they were in and the location they were at. The owners, full of sorrow on their faces, talked to the shelter workers and explained to them how they could no longer take care of Scooter and Max. They explained with much dismay that their financial situation would no longer allow for them to care for the dogs and ensure that they got proper meals and exercise. The owners felt that instead of leaving them abandoned on the street or giving them to a new owner they didn't know, they thought it was best to send them to a shelter where they knew that they would be well taken care of until they got rehomed. They explained how bad they felt, but at this time it was the best thing to do. Scooter and Max ran up to their owners with their tails wagging, excited to go home, when they saw their owners walking out the door, getting ready to leave. Of course, they didn't follow their owners home. The owners looked at the dog one last time, bent over, gave them head scratches, and hugged them before standing up and leaving without another look. The dog, seemingly confused about what was happening, looked at the staff at the counter, waiting for the staff owners to open the door so they could follow their owners home. But this never happened, and it appeared to the dogs that this reality was beginning to sink in, especially for Max. He immediately became withdrawn and sad, his little body cowering in a corner. He didn't wag his tail anymore. All he did was sit in the corner by the window in search of his owners, waiting for them to come back. But of course they never did. Max grew more and more distressed as he peered out the window, his eyes following every car that drove by. Scooter, on the other hand, was still optimistic. He wasn't quietly sitting in the corner like his brother. Instead, he was jumping around and going to the door. It appeared that he believed his owners would be back. However, as hours passed and the door did not swing open, the realization that the owners were not coming back filled the room. The dogs became even more sad as the shelter workers had taken them to the back to be in the cages. This was a huge and significant contrast to the home that they once knew. The chain-link fence, multiple cramped cages, and tiled floor were not what these dogs were used to. They had come from a home full of warm, fluffy blankets and stuffed animals. Max and Scooter had never been separated before. For the first time, the two dogs, who are like best friends, had to sleep in separate cages, because the cages and the shelter were not big enough to accommodate two dogs together. This caused even more distress to the young dogs as they sat and isolated themselves in the corners, whispering and whimpering all day and night. It was extremely sad and difficult the first night for Max and Scooter. They must have felt very scared and alone. The best workers could do was out of the cages together when they slept at night. Even with that, the sound of whimpering dogs could be heard coming from the cages. Weeks went by and this only became worse. The dogs did not eat, they lost a lot of weight, and they were always sad and crying. When it was playtime, Max and Scooter moved together sluggishly and did not engage with the other dogs or the toys. Instead, they sat away from the rest of the shelter, and they sat together resting their heads on one another. The staff became very worried and very concerned about the health of the two best friends. They knew that something had to be done to help these dogs because healthier equals happier. An idea came to mind that they would recreate a video and post it online showing how sweet and loving and caring the little pups were. They would also explain how desperate they needed to be adopted into a loving home. The shelter workers did exactly that and made a video talking about the puppies. The video told everything about Max and Scooter. They are the most loving dogs, they are very playful and they're friendly, but right now they are incredibly sad about their owners that could no longer care for them, and now they only have each other. We're looking for a loving home for the dogs and we hope that they get one soon so they can continue being happy. The video went viral and the internet and many people across the city and the country shared the video and wanted to help out the poor dogs. Soon after, people would come into the shelter to visit Scooter and Max, pet them and give them treats, and even tell the workers that they were thinking of adopting one of the dogs. The first dog to be adopted was Scooter. A middle-aged couple took him into their home to take care of him after seeing the video online. Little did the couple know the difficulty that lay ahead. The couple were loving and supportive and had all the best intentions, but at home the dog was not getting settled with his new owners. He was not eating, he was not playing, he was not showing any signs that he was getting better. The new owners noticed that it looked like he was getting worse and that he needed to go back to the shelter. He was no longer even looking up or reacting to respond to them. They tried everything that they could. They gave him the space that he needed. They petted him and gave him all the love. They gave him all the treats and that they thought that he needed to get better, but he didn't. The couple also noticed the poor dog would cry all the time, and the new owners just didn't know what to do. Eventually, they concluded that it might be better to return Scooter to the shelter because with them, he was doing much, much worse. The two dogs were reunited once again when Scooter was returned to the shelter. Somehow, it looked like he had become better when he started eating a little bit more, and so did Max. The shelter staff had heard stories about the separation of dogs and how important companionship between dogs was, but they had never seen a story quite like this with Scooter and Max. The staff knew now that they could not separate the dogs again. They had to be together. And so they made another video, this time offering Max and Scooter as a package deal. Please adopt both of these dogs because they cannot be separated. They are best friends and they are looking for a home that can take them together. The video went even more viral than the last video. Scooter and Max had touched the hearts of many, and the internet rallied around the dogs in search of a home that could accommodate two. The shelter workers were hopeful that this would lead to the dogs getting the help that they needed to make the brothers happy. The requests and inquiries began to dwindle after a while, and the shelter workers had not found a suitable match for Max and Scooter. The reality began to set in as how difficult it was to actually get a home that would take two dogs. The kind-hearted workers at the shelter became a little worried and sad that Max and Scooter would not be adopted as a pair. They had to do what was best for the dogs individually as well, so they sadly decided to put them up for adoption again, but this time separately. In hopes that both dogs would go to a loving home, it was not the choice that they had wanted, but they had to at least try something to make sure the dogs became happy again. This time, it was Max who was adopted. The workers did the relevant checks to find a loving home for him, and the new owners, just like the middle-aged couple that had initially adopted Scooter, had no idea the extent to which the dogs were distressed. The young couple had prepared their home for Max with everything a dog could dream of. He had a warm, comfortable bed that had so many toys. They even had his favorite treats and snacks. But with all that, Max still did not adapt well to his new home, just like Scooter had been the poor dog was so traumatized by his separation from his brother he didn't eat. He would also whimper and cry as he sat and looked out the window. The owners tried everything to encourage Max and coax him out of his melancholy-filled mood, but nothing worked. Not even Max's favorite thing to do, which was catch a ball. The worried couple took Max to their nearby park in hopes that running around would help him feel better, but the poor dog simply sat without moving. Max, who before would wag his tail happily when strangers came to pet him, did not react at all to this as people came up to him. The new owners grew even more worried. Finally, they decided what to do. Early the next day, they drove down to the shelter. What happened next was something that nobody expected. Neither the staff nor the dogs thought this day would come, but the couple informed the staff that they were there to take Scooter as well. Happy and grateful for this news, the staff sorted out the paperwork quickly, and soon enough, Scooter was in the car. Little did he know he was on his way to see his brother again. At the house, Max waited sadly by the window as he usually did every day. When he saw his new owner's car pull into the driveway, he didn't have any reaction until he saw Scooter jump out of the car. Just then, his tail began to wag really hard. Max raced to the door, and as soon as the owners opened it, the two dogs were jumping and were happy. It was a beautiful reunion, which the owners recorded and sent it to the shelter. The workers at the shelter were so happy that they almost cried when they saw the video. They uploaded the video online to update the online community who'd rallied around the dogs to the beautiful news. Max and Scooter began feeling better. They were eating more and playing with their new family. Their owners showered them with all the love and care that they needed to heal and grow. It was a beautiful sight, seeing the two dogs who were once shadows of themselves, who didn't play or eat, but now they were the happiest dogs on earth because they had a loving home. However, the most important thing was that they had each other. This heartwarming story spread across the world, spreading a message of hope and love and reminding people that animals have a more complex emotional level than many may think. The online community often received updates about Max and Scooter as they grew and developed and were happier than ever. What do you think about this story? Do you have a dog at home? Let us know in the comments below.